Emilie Young makes over $30,000 a year in passive income through her beloved crochet brand, Wavelengths, and has established herself as a sought-after collaborator with global brands in the crafting industry. To Sweden, Alaska, all throughout the US, all throughout Europe. Despite these impressive achievements, Emilie continues to hold down her day job. Today, we talk about how to turn passion into a steady income stream, growth hacking social media, and the decision to not go all in on a side hustle. I think her story will resonate with a lot of you. Emilie, I'm feeling really cozy right now. Thank you for having me in this space.
Yeah, of course. Welcome. Thanks for coming by.
Tell me more about Wavelengths and how that started.
So I started this a few years ago. I think it was 2017. I was doing competitive synchronized swimming still at a master's level, and we were going to Worlds in Budapest, and I didn't have very much money. So this was kind of like a crafty way for me to try and raise a few extra funds for the event and to get out there. But I started off with I was doing these weird hoop wall hangings, and then that migrated to macrame, and then that migrated to making all these pom-pom things in terms of garlands and wall hangings and all this stuff. And then eventually it landed on crochet.
Have you always been very crafty?
Oh yeah, for sure. I remember as a kid, crafty, but also that little entrepreneurial spirit where I can remember in second grade, I would make those knotted friendship bracelets, and I would bring them to school in a Ziploc bag, and I would sell them to my friends for a toonie.
I definitely would have been one of those people that bought many of those.
And then in high school I was making various jewelry, and then I was always wanting to monetize these things, not just make them for myself. So
natural business person. You were trying to raise some money to be able to go to Budapest for synchro. Was Wavelengths always the name of this little artsy project?
Yeah, it was always the name. I liked having that name that wasn't related to a specific craft because I was changing and evolving constantly. And while I've been in the crochet world for 5-6 years now, who knows, right? And I don't want to have a name that is so specific to a specific craft.
And did you do the brand work all by yourself?
No. So I worked with my friend Justine. Initially did some branding work for me a few years ago. Did a really great job of putting a brand book together for me in terms of color palettes and fonts to use and just the whole design. So I was really thrilled.
I would consider crochet pretty niche, and it seems like Wavelengths has quite a large audience. How did you get your audience to be this size?
I think crochet used to be a lot nicher pre-pandemic, and then in the pandemic people were looking for things to do. In terms of building the audience, I really tapped into Reels.
Instagram Reels.
Yeah, Instagram Reels.
Okay.
In 2021 when it was just taking off. That's definitely where I got a big boost in following.
That's fascinating because we've seen a lot of brands and creators jump onto new social media tools and platforms. And so it seems like you were able to ride that wave.
Mm-hmm.
And so from a marketing standpoint, has that been your main driver of growth, or have you used other platforms as well, and what's worked for you?
Yeah, it's definitely been mostly social media. That is what I do for my day job as well. So I do have an understanding of how these spaces work. Outside of social, I didn't really push it too hard. I know I want to get into email marketing and more pieces like that, but in terms of working full time, there's not a lot of opportunity to do all of it.
With this large audience that you've been able to grow over the years and across the different platforms, how many of them would you say have converted to customers?
It really depends because I do sell my patterns on a lot of different platforms. So I have my own website on Shopify. I have an Etsy page. I have a setup on Love Crafts, which is they sell craft supplies, and Ravelry. So while I do have this audience on social media, there's also people who are finding me through these separate channels as well. And I've started making more YouTube videos. Tutorial videos to just help people learn the craft and all that. So I'm seeing a lot of traffic coming from there as well.
I think you also listed that you sold on your website, on Etsy, on Shopify. Are all of your main revenue channels pretty equal, or does one shine above the others?
I would say my Shopify is probably the best one. I definitely push that one more on my social channels. So whenever I'm linking to any specific pattern, or if I'm doing a sale of any sort, I always just do it straight to my Shopify. It's just easier to just keep all of that in one place. But I do set it up in those other channels just in terms of getting that reach from people who might not necessarily be following me on social media.
And has that changed over time, or was that always the case, being Shopify dominant?
It has changed. So yeah, I started off mostly selling through Lovecrafts actually. And then yeah, when I wanted to build more of like a specific brand and have that branding and that look, that's where I jumped into having my own website just so I could have my little home there.
Can you give some insight as to how big this business is, and is it profitable and growing?
It is a good chunk of money that's coming in. I would like a good mid-sized business. And I mean, what's great about it too is that it's passive income. So I write the pattern, I get it tested and get that all sorted out. But then once it's done, and it's people are buying a PDF.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So they're not even buying actual pieces.
No, I tried to set myself up to sell finished goods. Selling finished goods for crochet is not terribly profitable because it takes me 15 to 17 hours to make a sweater, and the cost of material there. So it's great that I'm able to offer that you can make it yourself. And if you're a beginner, then I have that available for people.
So does that mean that your customers, the people who are buying these patterns, they're all around the world?
So yeah, they're totally global. And what's great too is that, so for designing the patterns, there is a testing process that I go through.
So walk me through from when you have an idea for a pattern to actually the stage of where you're putting on the site to sell.
From start to finish, it's like a 3-4 month process for a design. So it starts just as a thought, an idea in my mind. I really like tapping into fashion trends that aren't seen in knitwear. So that's where I kind of get some inspiration. A couple years ago, I came up with my version of like the shacket, where I call it my fisking coat. It has like the 2 like front pockets, little collar. It's really cozy. I'm not a sketcher. People always ask for sketches and I can't draw for the life of me. So I'm like, no, I have this idea in my mind and I know I can totally visualize it and picture it. I don't need to put it down on paper. I start working on it just right away. I keep notes of all the number of stitches that I'm doing and the increases, decreases, and then I make the full piece as a sample. So then I break it down and I write out everything, all the instructions more clearly and properly. And then from that point, I grade it. So all my patterns run from a size extra small to a 3XL. So there's a lot of math involved when it comes to grading. So if you're adding an inch, then that's like adding 4 stitches and how that like reflects in increases and decreases. So there is a lot of thought process that goes behind there. Once I have the pattern all written up, then I put out a tester call. They take the pattern, they have a size that they're meant to test, and just to make sure that all the math adds up and everything makes sense in the pattern and make sure that I have clarity. But yeah, I've worked with testers from the Philippines to Kenya to Sweden, Alaska, all throughout the US, like all throughout Europe.
It's so global.
Yeah.
And so when you say test, does that mean they take that pattern and they just like make a version of it and just see if it works?
They make like their own sort of sample of it. So they provide me all of their feedback on that. And then we publish it and I post it on all 4 of those sites, which can be a tedious process. I have stayed up till like 2 a.m. on days before launch day trying to just like get everything out and make sure that everything is in order.
So do you set these launch dates as a bit of an artificial timeline for yourself to get things out?
Oh yeah, for sure. So yeah, I usually give my testers minimum of 2 months. And then usually once that deadline of 2 months, then I give myself a week to finish all the edits and set it up in the template that I put together and then for all the publishing.
And do you have anyone helping you with any of that, or are you just doing everything yourself?
No, this is all me.
All social media, all of the creation of the patterns, all of managing with the e-com, it's all you.
It's all me.
And how does that feel?
Right now it's a balance of trying to keep my sanity, but also do the things that I love to do.
And so for other people who might be juggling what I would call this as a bit of a side hustle, a passion project of sorts, and a full-time commitment, what advice would you give them in terms of managing their time and staying motivated?
I would say don't push yourself too hard. If it doesn't feel right, step back, take a break.
Yeah.
And then once you have that drive again and motivation, jump back in. That's been the big piece for me, where this year I was like wanting to do everything and anything, but I can't do it. So I'm trying more and more to teach myself to just slow down. It's okay. And yeah, just not be so hard on myself.
I think setting those boundaries are really, really important, because if you don't take that step back, you might burn out and you might lose that passion and that spark to actually do it in the first place.
Sure.
Yeah. So I think you recognizing that and giving yourself some space, I think, is really, really nice to see. I just want to dial back a bit and talk about the community that you're building. This community that you build all around the world seems to be helping you quite a bit, but do you do any local efforts as well?
Yeah. So back in May, I started these crochet/knit hangouts. We did our first little hangout in High Park at the end of May. It was so fun to just gab about this craft that we're all obsessed with, but that like our direct friends don't necessarily fully understand. And then, that was such a fun time that we decided to do it again in June. And people were coming out who like were clearly a little bit more introverted, but being in a space that they like are comfortable in and with this thing that gives them like some ease, then they really started to open up and they've been coming back. So it's been great. I'm looking to start the Toronto Crochet Collective.
That sounds fancy and official.
Right? As well as like the Toronto Knitting Collective. Just a nice little group for everyone to join in, because I was finding that with my page, because it is so global, I think it's like 2% of my followers are in Canada. So I just felt like I've been posting the stuff about Toronto meetups, but a lot of the people who follow me are like, I can't come to that.
Yeah.
So I was like, maybe we should start our own little thing. Anyone can join. If anyone wants to learn and come by, we usually have some extra materials and tools for you to join in on. But that's a work in progress right now. Meeting with a friend in a couple of weeks, to a different friend, to help me work with branding for that piece as well.
I think you recognizing that one of your channels having such a big and diverse audience, not necessarily resonating with local content. The companies that are trying to reach everyone through all of their channels might not actually be the right approach. What I've seen a lot of is brands getting that wrong. And so it's actually really, really smart.
My brain loves to go a million miles an hour when I'm trying to go to bed at night. And that's just something that popped up. And then I just started building and churning on it. So I got really excited. And as I said, I already secured myself an Instagram handle that night when I was first thinking about it.
So I wanted to segue into more on the partnerships and collaboration side, back to the more global Wavelengths. Have you worked with partners from other countries before?
Yeah, I've worked with a number of yarn partners. I've worked with brands from Denmark, from England, and the US, where I get like a commission rate for it. They send me the yarn.
Can you share any specific learnings or lessons that you had with working with some of these larger partners?
I've gotten a little bit frustrated. It has been also unmotivating, just with trying to keep up with the demands for someone else.
Yeah.
So I am starting to scale back a little bit on those collaborations, just being mindful of the time that I have to work on these things.
Do these partners reach out to you, or do you find them and they're just yarn that you already use?
A little bit of both. So with Hobby Yarn in Denmark, they reached out to me. And with that one, I developed 3 patterns with them. So it was a pretty solid partnership. But after a while, it was becoming a little bit cumbersome. Admittedly, the communication wasn't always very great. So there was a lot of confusion that was going on. And so after the 3 patterns, I was like, okay, I think we can stop with this one.
And what is your vision for the growth of Wavelengths? Is this a passive side income that's really, truly just something you're passionate about? Or do you have ambitions to grow it, to work with more partners, and to build that global audience and customer base?
Yeah, I would love that. I just don't know if it's feasible for me in this economy and in living in like a city like Toronto. I flip-flop between wanting to make it bigger and me being happy with where it is right now.
When I see it on social media, I see a lot of that narrative that, you can turn your side hustle into your main business and you can make so much more money and be more flexible, where I think that might be true for some people and for some projects. That might not be the case for everyone. And to be able to look at something like Wavelengths that has such an incredible audience, has that track record, has the global partnerships, and still you're holding on to your full-time job.
Yeah.
Still, it's not feasible in a large metropolitan city like Toronto.
Yeah.
And how has your definition of success for Wavelengths changed over the years?
I was definitely spending a lot of time just like really trying to push out and drill out as many patterns as I could. But then, yeah, just mentally after a while, I was like, this isn't feasible. I need to slow down. Also, not that I was running out of ideas, though. I still have a lot of ideas and they're all stored up in here and I'm just like ready to jump on them when I can. I mean, I think the ultimate daydream that I have is opening a yarn store.
Have you considered selling merch as part of your revenue stream?
I have, yeah. I definitely want to play around with more like if they're like crochet related quotes or just like fun illustrations. And especially with the Toronto Crochet Collective.
Yeah.
Yes.
Other people who might be looking at their side hustles and are finding themselves in a similar situation, balancing a full-time job that has like salary and benefits and something that they're actually truly enjoying. What type of advice would you give them in terms of how to approach your life, how to approach the realities of running this side hustle?
I know there's some people out there who really want to go for it. And if they want to, go for it.
Yeah.
I think it'll be a sad thing if you grow up and you always have that what if in the back of your head. So give it your best shot.
I'm ready to learn some crochet. Emilie, thank you so much for being so open about your journey, about Wavelengths and where it started and where it's going. And I really enjoyed having this conversation with you.
Thank you so much for coming by. I love talking about this.
Mood blanket. It has the date range of January 1st to May 31st of this year. So every day I tracked out my mood and every row is correspondent to one of those days. And it's usually the mood that I felt like the strongest that day. With the tail down.
Okay.
And then I wrap from the front to the back.
Yeah.
Bring it forward again. And then pull your fingers out of the loop and you'll pull on the working yarn. Oops. Through the whole way. Ooh.
Okay. Is that it?
Yeah. So for this one, you kind of go back and forth.
Okay.
And there's a bit of a seam. You can barely tell, but there's a seam here that's being built up.